The Irrational Confidence Podcast.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're talking college football, and it was week number 12. I can't believe we have a dozen weeks in the year, and if you count week 0, like Fresh pointed out, it's a baker's dozen. I'm joined by the baker himself, Fresh. Fresh, how you doing, buddy?
Haps, I'm doing great. Dogs ain't dead yet, still alive. It was a hectic, long Saturday for a lot of programs. It just shows you got to show up every single Saturday and make plays. BYU finally got caught. SMU had themselves a battle, and they held on. Texas didn't look that great. Oregon and Wisconsin, there were they were lucky to survive Madison. It was just hey, Louisville goes and gets beat by Stanford. You got to show up every single Saturday and be ready to go. And we're already seeing chaos now in middle November, and we haven't even gotten to the 12-team playoff and rolling from there. And even the stakes are getting raised. So it's just going to keep building and building 1 week at a time.
Yeah, it really is starting to make this college football season look like it is the second coming of 2007 and how much chaos has happened all the way back then. We've had chaos galore ever since, I think, probably like halfway through the season, we started seeing those big-time upsets. This weekend did not disappoint. I even have on my notes here, Clemson surviving. Pitt should have had that game won. BYU, huge upset by the Jayhawks. You know, though, it's sad because we had such high expectations for Rock Chalk Jayhawk, and they didn't live up to expectations, but still a force to be reckoned with of the Kansas Jayhawks with that BYU upset. It doesn't really, I don't know if that upset like sends shockwaves yet through the system, but that could be one of the biggest upsets of the year if everything else comes to pass.
Well, and that one, I think the one that's kind of also under the radar was Arizona State, who's been right there in the conversation, goes into Manhattan and takes out the Wildcats, who we all kind of thought were, they're going to hang around, they're going to get it done, and be that, that team that's just that, hey, they've been through the battles, and now they looked at they're tired, they're kind of worn out. They should have lost to Kansas a couple of weeks ago. We have a weird situation with BYU now losing. Colorado has been constantly building momentum every single week and getting better and better. Early in the year, last year, they weren't, there was definitely flaws. They looked rough versus North Dakota State in the opener. They got destroyed by Nebraska. And since that Nebraska game, this team's found its soul, where they're physical line of scrimmage, they're tackling, they're making plays. And between Arizona State, them, and BYU, it's not like which of the two teams is going to make it. We kind of have a Arizona State at BYU coming up next week, which will that kind of a semifinal in the Big 12. But that conference shaking itself out. You bring up the ACC where SMU is playing well, but they fought a pesky Boston College team. Miami's had their issues. Clemson's surviving. Pitt, Syracuse makes a big run out there, building momentum there. The ACC and Big 12, I think they're most interesting stories because in reality, I think there's not much room for error, and it's tough to see the way the Big Ten and the SEC is playing unless chaos continues to ensue, that both those schools are going to get to and so who keeps building momentum to get the title game and then win that title game and move forward. But it's just, that's why we love watching football. You never know what's going to happen. Every play matters.
Right, absolutely. Let's stick in the Big 12 here for a second, Fresh. So who are we considering the leader in the clubhouse over there in the Big 12? Are you still kind of looking at the Cougars saying like they're the one team, or has Colorado kind of taken the mantle from them?
I think Colorado, in my opinion, has taken the mantle. BYU for the past couple of weeks, they've kind of been teetering. They had a good early run. Obviously, they went took care of UCF and they took care of Baylor in those early kicks. I just haven't the past 3 weeks haven't really felt the red flag. BYU like onslaught. They've been kind of squeaking by. It's used we all talk about the ball don't lie. Well, they got really lucky versus Utah. They shouldn't have had that flag thrown. It was kind of like their chickens came home to roost here in this game where they try to play tight 2 in a row. Kansas took care of Iowa State last week. This past week, they take care of BYU. They're knocking people off. It's just it raises an interesting story. Now, will BYU get back and build momentum if they can go and take care of Arizona State this upcoming week? Yeah. If not, then I think the reality will come to fruition. Well, I might potentially have an Arizona State Colorado matchup for the Big 12 title. But we look at Shador, look at Travis Hunter, that host of receivers, the vibes right now up there in Boulder are building, and they have an easy road relatively compared to everybody else the rest of the season to get to that Big 12 title game. And believe me, the TV execs, the college football player, they want Prime in. And if Prime and Shador and Travis get in, that's going to be a big ratings boost and a focus. So that team right now, they've shown they can do it. They've shown they can win tough. They're looking more gritty. Their defense is playing better. Across the board, they're looking legit for the Big 12.
Right. And let's jump over real quick to the ACC because you say something interesting. And this has been a wide-ranging debate between us here. Give me the scenario that you see. Is there a path for the ACC to get two teams in? And what would that path have to look like to you?
Well, I'll tell you right now, the ACC has a much better path to get two than the Big 12.
Right.
The way I could see that playing out is we have obviously Indiana, Ohio State coming up this week. If Indiana gets boat raced, because right now between Texas, Penn State, and Indiana,
right,
they've all played 30 games combined, and combined they've only beaten one team currently ranked in the college football playoff top 25, and that's when Penn State beat Illinois. So there's no star-studded wins. Now, if Texas beats A&M or doesn't, that's a whole different story right there in the SEC. But I think they could fill potentially that spot. Penn State, I think they have a clear west away. I don't think they're going to miss out on the Big Ten title game because they're probably not going to go. But they've done enough, I think, to get themselves in that contention. Indiana's the one where just people believe them because their strength of schedule is 102nd in the country. They've been beating the trash out of people. They haven't squeaked by. They've actually dominated their games, which has been impressive, and that's what's caught our attention. But now they're playing Ohio State in the shoe, which Ohio State still has a lot to play for. They still have a lot to play for. If it's a close game, I think that really will maybe solidify them in that playoff spot. That could be a one loss. But if they get beat by 20 plus and it's non-competitive, that's going to raise questions in the committee's eyes because of the logo and the standards. This is the first 10-win season in Indiana history. Will that linger with the committee? Now, back to the ACC and how this opens up a spot. Right now, I think SMU, they've shown consistently they played a pretty solid, they've done what they had to do. Miami's had some close calls. They survived. They got the refs, obviously, helped them a couple times. Miami doesn't have a sexy win on their schedule. So that's probably what the committee is also waiting for. But they do have Cam Ward. It's the U. It's the logo. If the two of them play for an ACC title, and it is a battle, and it's a one-possession game, very competitive, going back and forth, and both those schools are 11-1 going into the game, and you see a real fight, that right there might give them the benefit to say, hey, where's SMU? Where's Miami? Because right now I currently have SMU ranked ahead of Miami. But if one blows the other out, and it's a last lingering memory, that 2-loss in the ACC, the way it is, because there's a lot of parity right now in that league, that might sort of be painful. I think it'd be better for them to play a close game on purpose and make it look really competitive, make it a one-possession game, kind of like give a wink to each other. It's like, hey, it's great one of us hosts a trophy, but the real bigger prize is getting into playoff. But we'll know this Saturday if that really comes to fruition. The one thing for Miami, though, is that it had the trip to Syracuse on Thanksgiving weekend. Syracuse has built some momentum. They have a solid, Kyle McCord, that offense can score, and the Miami defense hasn't played great. If they get caught looking ahead to the ACC title game and don't take Syracuse, serious, that kind of it's a win and in situation for the Hurricanes, and that two-team situation is not there. We obviously have a couple weeks left to go through this scenario, but ACC has a chance, but it's how can they keep it competitive and make their game against each other look good. I think Clemson's chances, they're done. They're out. I don't think they're going to beat South Carolina.
Right. I think that one thing, though, you did gloss over and didn't hit with it. I agree with everything you said, but also the fact that what we're seeing in the SEC. SEC is starting to cannibalize itself a little bit more and more. And I get it. You're going to get the big name guys, and you're going to have a little bit of benefit of the doubt with Texas, well, although Texas' schedule has been an absolute joke here, folks. You don't believe me? You want to talk about a team getting the benefit of the doubt regardless? Texas
100%.
is getting that 100%. Alabama, Georgia, I'll give you both have played a very tough schedule. I give them a little bit of credit. But even looking at Ole Miss, what's Ole Miss's marquee win outside of Georgia? You have one big win on your schedule. Again, LSU looked awful against Florida.
Yeah, the LSU win, well, that loss right now for Ole Miss to LSU and the loss to Kentucky are looking worse.
Right.
But they have that dominating win over Georgia, which it's more recent than it was mine.
Right. But
my biggest concerns around Texas with you.
Right. But again, let's say hypothetically, and this is, although I doubt this is going to happen, but again, Alabama picks up another L in the Iron Bowl.
Well, they're out.
But then what you're talking, again, there's still pathways. And I think you have a point here that I think there's pathways for both SEC. Because right now, if the playoffs started today, I think you're right. I think both conferences get 4 in. I think Big Ten and SEC get 4 in. I think, though, the question that we're going to be asking ourselves, does the Big Ten does Indiana really the question of them? Same thing with Penn State, though, a little bit. Like, what's Penn State's reason for hanging around there as well? You take a look at SMU, Miami. The committee get both of them in just for name recognition and kind of like the story as well.
I think name recognition. That if you're going name recognition, then Penn State is going to supersede SMU, unfortunately.
Right.
But Penn State is that one where they were ranked so high originally. They blew a 10-point lead to Ohio State at home. What else have they done? They beat an average West Virginia team week 1 after a thunderstorm. They struggled versus Wisconsin, but maybe that kind of Wisconsin's way they played Oregon kind of helped them. There's questions there. And I think honestly, I think there's questions with every single team right now. And this is no clear-cut number one because Oregon showed some serious flaws in Madison. Their offense was shut down. They were not functioning. The defense was okay. If they played a better quarterback, they'd probably lose that ball game. Maybe they're in coast mode right now to Indianapolis, but even Oregon showed maybe a little kink in the armor there versus an average at best Wisconsin football team who just fired their offensive coordinator.
So I hate to say this, though. Is Ohio State the most complete team then? Even though Oregon beat them on the field.
We will find out because if Ohio State can get themselves to Indianapolis and take on Oregon, they're going to have their chance to really prove it, and then that would be a lock into the number 1 seed.
Right.
Now, to Texas' point, here's the thing. I'm just going to say it right now. The Texans scheduled their only team that they truly played worth their salt was Georgia, and they got beat at home by 2 touchdowns. If they lose to Texas A&M, that's 2 losses. They're not playing for an SEC title. Mm-hmm. What resume do they have to even be in consideration in the top 12 in the country? I think that right there, that means Ole Miss has a better win. Alabama has a better win. Georgia beat them, and they have a Tennessee win on top of that, and they have a win over Clemson, who will probably somewhere ranked in the top 20. Texas has nothing to stand on. Texas has to beat A&M and Kentucky and get to the SEC championship game to even have a prayer at a guaranteed top 4 seed and win the league, or one of the other remaining 8 spots. And the brand, that's where we come back to it. If Texas and SMU, would the committee look at a blind resume, or they look at the logo and be back to the 80s all over again?
Right. And that I will argue SMU's got just as good of a schedule, if not better schedule than Texas does.
And they've taken care of business. Like the BYU game, even though it was a loss, add some little credence because Texas, Colorado State is actually playing okay, but we're going to put a Mountain West team who's maybe going to make the Mountain West title game and get boat raced by Boise State as a solid, game. Texas needs to win out to avoid that conversation and avoid the committee. I think right now is begging Texas to win out.
Right.
Because if they have to make a call at an at-large spot with a 2-loss Texas Longhorn football team who loses to an in-state rival and is already behind 3 other teams in the SEC, that will cause extreme consternation across the nation.
I think everyone's seen what's going to happen here. The Big Ten and the SEC being as large as they are, you're going to have you're going to have the cream rise to the top on that. The ACC, yeah, it's a bigger conference. It's not to the same level, but I think the size of the Big 12 actually is hurting a little bit because they played round robin and all beat up on each other. I think that comes into play.
It's coming into play a little bit, but we already knew coming into the season
Big 12 would be the most competitive.
It was going to be the most competitive top to bottom, but we weren't going to have 3 to 4 elite teams across the spectrum. And actually,
I expected to.
But most everyone figured Oklahoma State and Utah would be in contention, and they're the bottom feeders of the league right now.
Right.
So that just shows you that there's a lot. I mean, the portal, actually, to bring that in now, the portal has caused most of this chaos because now, look at Indiana. This team, this is not building from the freshmen, the sophomores to juniors to seniors. The majority of that roster all came from the transfer portal. And they
mostly came from James Madison.
And they had a solid schedule, but that entire team migrated, and you get yourself a quarterback and you're able to roll.
Right.
And look, people can complain, well, they had the 102nd schedule, but nobody expected Indiana to be a playoff contender coming into the year. So no one gave a crap about their schedule at the beginning of the year. They had no problem in playing Western Illinois or Charlotte. They come out and take care of business. And
would anyone pick them to be 7-5?
No, I think maybe 6 and 6, 7-5. Nobody even If you look at the schedule, all right, Maryland, that's maybe a toss-up. But the Nebraska game, it's like Nebraska, Dylan Raiola, Matt Rule, they would have gone in there and into Bloomington, whooped the tail. But here they are. And Michigan, even if Michigan average football team, that guy Michigan would beat Indiana. Like there's right there, that's 2 wins that would have been losses just at looking at the schedule up top, what it is. But Indiana, if they can come in and give a show into Ohio State, because this is going to be a big test. I mean, O'Rourke, that entire team, like you're going to the shoe with a lot on the line. And even for Ohio State, if Ohio State loses to Indiana, then questions get raised about them. I'm not saying they're not going to make the playoff, but they won't be hosting a playoff game. They'll probably be in that 9 to 12 range. So there's a lot on the line for the Buckeyes, too. We got to show up and take care of business, and you can't just win by 3. You've got to come out and show your worth. So there's a lot. The fact we've been having this conversation right now in late November is, again, what I said last time. The playoff and expansion of 12 teams is already paying dividends 20 times over because everyone's talking about 16 to 18 teams in multiple races and conferences as opposed to, well, we got 6 teams really in contention for 4 spots, and we won't really know anything until December.
All right, well, Fresh, let's take a little bit of a pause from our playoff talk here, and let's move over to the Heisman real quick. Mr. Jeanty did his best Desmond Howard impersonation, striking the Heisman pose after touchdown number 25 on the year. Again, everyone, I feel like, wants to just give the award to Travis Hunter or Cam Ward, and I'm just so much more impressed with what Jeanty is doing out at Boise State.
Well, I think Travis Hunter is definitely a worthy player. The guy plays on both sides of the ball.
They're worthy.
But I think he is getting a lot of extra the PR because who his coach is. And that helps push that. Boise State, Ashton Jeanty, 25 touchdowns. It's pretty ridiculous. I'm going to say I think he actually threw the Heisman pose back at Hunter because during the game, Hunter had a pick, which, folks, he was in the right place at the right time. The ball was knocked up, and he was sort of in the zone and was able to get the ball. Like, awareness is great. It's not like he wasn't covering the receiver. He made a play. He brought down, I think, his best play of the day was he brought down a jump ball, a 50-50 ball down the field, went up there and brought it and made a great play. I mean, he has skills. He's playing tons of plays, and it's amazing. Jeanty is scoring touchdowns. Jeanty's a machine. Look what he did versus Oregon. He had 3 touchdowns versus the Ducks in Eugene. It's going to be a 1-2 for them. I honestly think Cam Ward is drifted to that 3rd spot, in my opinion. That loss for Miami, I think, dinged up on them a little bit, and them having 2 close games that they probably should have lost. The committee's kind of worn it off. They're like, it's great. You're three, in my opinion. But Jeanty's a one-man machine. Travis Hunter's a one-man machine. And the two of them, they're going to have the eyes on them now going down the stretch, where I think it's going to be who blinks first. Because you have right now, Colorado's a chance to go, win a Big 12 title. Looks like Boise State, unless they somehow collapse or have a drastic choke job, they're going to be in the playoff.
Right.
Now, it would be tragic. But here, I'll give you a scenario right now. If it's neck and neck right here, and Boise State goes into the Mountain West title game and loses to a UNLV or Colorado State, whoever that opponent will be, and they are not the Mountain West champion, and they're not going to the playoff, does that eliminate for him from the Heisman campaign?
Aren't the votes in prior to the conference championship game?
I think they run through conference championship weekend.
I thought the votes have to be in prior to conference championship.
Heisman's the week after the conference championship games.
Right. That's why I think that I thought the votes have to be in prior to conference championship.
Well, if that's the case, then it doesn't matter. I think it's through that weekend. I think it's through the weekend to help make an impact. But that right there,
that would depend a lot on
that'd be a big
my answer.
I think Ward's going to have to go out the next 2 weeks against and put up like 12 touchdowns, and
which he very well could.
Which he could. Travis Hunter, I think, needs a big a moment.
He doesn't have that. See, that's my thing. That right there is exactly my issue with this piece. Where
he's been injured a little bit, but he has some stats. He has some catches. If he wants to truly win the Heisman, be the number one player, make a statement in their next game, go out, give me a 10 catch, 150 and a tud, and maybe a pick or 2 picks. Just have just keep the moments coming.
So let's use the Jordan Travis argument here. And I always thought the Jordan Travis argument was the best situation with it. If Jordan Travis was so instrumental to keeping FSU out of the playoff last year because he goes down getting hurt, he should have won the Heisman. So think about it this way. If Jeanty goes down for Boise State, would you honestly think they have a chance to beat anyone in the Mountain West championship game? Absolutely not.
Well, I think they could win the Mountain West, but if they got in the playoff, they'd be 21 point underdogs. They'd be 21 point underdogs against,
if not more,
just about anyone.
Yeah, and then you take a look at if Travis Hunter went down, it'd be a big blow. But there are other people on that team that I don't think it would be absolutely devastating because they've played without him before. And then Cam Ward, I'd maybe make the same case too. I don't necessarily know how good Miami's backup situation is, but I don't know. I still think it should be Jeanty's award to lose, but I feel like everyone wants to give it to someone else. They don't want the Heisman Trophy to be out in Boise, Idaho, which is it's a damn shame there if you do that, because you're talking about legitimately one of, if not, I'd put this into a top 5-7 season of all time for a running back.
Yeah, I think we're at the point where it's also stats are one thing, eye test is one thing, media popularity contest is the element that you're up to. Who, I might sound like a jerk here, but who wants to give the vote so they can have access to Travis Hunter when he's in the NFL or to Prime? As more like hey, I'm gonna do right by you, you do right by me. I voted for you. I voted for him.
Right.
The quid pro quo kind of mentality. Whether, are you really going to get some sort of extra access or hookup or behind the scenes whatever if you vote for Ashton Jeanty from Boise State, or are you going to have access to Prime and all the stuff that's going on, all the celebrities that are on the sideline, that come to the games for the Buffaloes, like that? Where's your mentality and your true motivation at? Everyone else has an angle. Everybody has an angle, and that right there might come into play.
Right. I get it. I just think it's ridiculous because I do think Ashton Jeanty is the most meaningful to his team and obviously the most dominant player in college football this year. He's been impressive. And again, that's no knock to Travis Hunter. That's no knock to Cam Ward. I think they've had phenomenal seasons. Heck, and there's a couple other guys out there. Dylan Gabriel, what he's meant to Oregon following up after Bo Nix. I'd even throw Will Howard or Rourke over at Indiana.
Yeah.
All those guys would have an argument.
You bring up a good point about being the only guy. Like, Travis Hunter's on the field. They can throw away from him all they want, and they can avoid him, so he's not going to get the stats. Which, I mean, that's a testament to how good he is, but they're not going to even try to deal with him. On offense, he's one of 4 or 5 opportunities for Shador to get the ball to, not including Shador using his own legs. You look at Cam Ward. Yeah, he can throw it on any of the receivers. He can use his legs. He can hand it off to David Martinez or any other running back in that backfield. He can use multiple groups. With Boise State, everybody knows Ashton Jeanty's getting the ball 75% of the time. 75% of the time, he's going to be touching the ball. And still having the yards per contact, yards after contact, yards per carry, yards per catch, the touchdown totals. He's even volunteered to return kicks. And if in the playoff, he might actually return kicks just because he's that explosive, but they need to save his body for the offensive workload. If that as a more of a way to look at that, where he is getting the ball, everyone knows he's getting the ball, and he's still successful.
Right, absolutely. All right, Fresh. Well, hey, we're recapping week number 12 here. We got a great week. I have one other thing, but you know what? We're running already at about 30 minutes here. I'll throw this to you here. Billy Napier truly saving his job this past weekend.
I'll tell you right now. I mean, we're both known Gator haters. What has Billy Napier done recently? The players are actually playing for him, and they're playing for each other.
Right.
And is there momentum? Maybe DJ Legwood showing as a freshman. Guys are seeing, like, hey, I want to play with that kid. Ball running back, Badger the receivers, looking good. They've shown positive momentum. Because if we look at other schools, their schools and teams, the players just quit. And they're like, we're done.
Right.
Whatever, I'm out. And the daunting went, well, yeah. But you look at the schedule, how brutal it was, and the kids still took it on as a challenge. They might, we might have some deficiencies. We might not have the depth. Our coach is being blasted. He's taking all of it for him. Like, he was out there standing and taking everything for him. And those kids showed up. They played hard versus the Dogs. They were overwhelmed versus Texas a week after. I think that's because they had a third-string quarterback, and you kind of you come down a little bit. But in this past week, losing 5 straight to LSU, and you just showed up and you fought hard. Now, speaking of a team that's quit, I think LSU's quit on Brian Kelly.
Right.
The antics on the sideline, him cussing out, Hilton Jr., having issues with, Kylan Lacey. It looks like Brian Kelly's in over his head, and he does not have the composure. And he is losing that entire team. That's going to impact recruiting. It might impact on-field play, transfer portal. But what we all thought would happen at Florida, where the players would erupt and there'd be mutiny and the coaches would be going back and forth with each other and also the players, that's happening in Baton Rouge right now. I mean, you got 3 straight losses. Hasn't happened since they got Notre Dame. It's
right.
It's starting to maybe show that maybe they made the wrong hire there. And it's a different, I'll wrap it here. We all kind of knew it was a weird hire when he went down to Louisiana and goes to Baton Rouge, LSU, and he has no connections to state whatsoever. And they're like, all right, how's this going to handle? He's actually going to play. He's going to play a tougher schedule. He can't pick his own games anymore.
Right.
How's he going to relate to the fan base? How's he relate to the players? It's not even like Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Arkansas, Texas, Texas A&M, Georgia, South Carolina, Kentucky, Auburn, Alabama, Florida. There are certain places where even if Ohio State, Michigan State, Nebraska, USC, there are certain schools and programs that you have to be able to relate to who they are already. You cannot go and change the culture per se. You can't. The fans, the region, Like Auburn's its own little mess and its own little thing. LSU's, it's state of Louisiana. It's everybody there. They are Cajuns. They're crazy. They're feisty. They can play football. They're rowdy. They will love you to death, and they will hate you if you stink.
Right.
He had no connection. And I think he can't win on the field right now. He was blessed having Jaden Daniels. He was blessed having Brian Thomas Jr., and Malik Neighbors right off the bat. His offensive line he brought in, Will Campbell, that offensive line, man, I mean, what are they? They're not doing anything. Harold Perkins was a great recruit. You win a recruiting war. Poor guy looks great on his field freshman year. Last year they moved him out of position, struggled. This year, unfortunately, gets hurt. And you start to see, where's the secondary? DBU. There's none of that there.
Right.
He blasts his own players in almost every press conference. They've quit on him. And I think LSU right now, you got to pull the plug. You can't go another year with this because right now we're certain to see in a tighter race, but you can't win a division. Because if this is East and West in the SEC, LSU, I think, still has, hey, they're still going to be in the conversation. But now you're competing against everybody to get 2 spots in the SEC title game, much less make a playoff push. You can't fall further down the pecking order because you're already right now, this season been passed by Ole Miss. Texas is there. A&M is looking great. Obviously, Georgia and Alabama are there. Florida's showing some life. South Carolina's looking much better right now. You could fall. You can't let a broken locker room, a broken program fall any further. You've got to learn to attack it early and get rid of the cancer. Right. Not maybe the wrong word. Get rid of the issue at the heart of it, and that's Brian Kelly. He does not belong at LSU, and it's time for him to go.
Right, and it's interesting to. I think we're going to see a lot about LSU is when that transfer portal initially opens up. How many of those kids jump ship? I think that'll be a very telling sign whether or not it's time to say goodbye, Brian Kelly. But, hey, listen, as much as I can't stand the Florida Gators at times, and really it's not so much my interaction with their fan base has been the thing that has annoyed me more than the team, especially since, Billy Napier has been there. I don't think Billy Napier is a bad, obnoxious dude. I think he's actually a pretty good coach. It's just their fan base is annoying as all get out sometimes to me. I'm impressed. I really am. And here's the thing that I would go so bold here, Fresh, is if they did not play the hardest schedule in America this year, and again, you think about what they've gone through and what they've had to do, I legitimately think that this could possibly be a top 25 team and a team that I will definitely, especially if everyone's coming back, I think it's someone that we can look at next year.
Yeah, there's definitely some momentum. Now, they obviously are hosting Ole Miss this week.
Right.
Can they play a spoiler role and knock down the Rebels?
Right.
Or was that win over LSU because LSU was in turmoil and Florida, now we got to see where they are on that roller coaster. Can they build off of that win over LSU and stack it versus Ole Miss and give a competitive game? Because they played really good versus Georgia. They laid down due to some deficiencies injury-wise, Texas. They got back up and they beat LSU. Where do they go from here? Can they? I'm not saying if they beat Ole Miss. Beating Ole Miss would be amazing. But if they are competitive, make it a 4-quarter game with the Rebels, all right, then we're still attacking and we're moving forward. If they come in here and lay a dud, then you're right back on that roller coaster where everything that you did to beat LSU, everything that you did to, to compete at a high level and almost, and really give Georgia everything you can handle, it's all for naught. So this is actually more of an important week for Billy Napier. Like, all right, you're coming off of a high vibe. How do you handle another matchup and get back up for it? And that'll be a real big test. Because right now they've shown some progress. They've shown some growth on the recruiting trail, especially with Florida State really stinking it up. They're getting kids from this, from there. How does Billy Napier and that program keep moving forward? And it's, to maybe move us to the Big Ten, look at Nebraska. We had good vibes coming into the year for Nebraska. We're like, all right, it's year 2 of Matt Rule. Rayola's there. They beat the trash out of Colorado. They struggle. They go to, they're up and down, go to Bloomington, get the break speed off of. The week after, they show up and compete versus Ohio State. And then they get blown out again. And now fan base, as of today, are kind of freaking out because they have a Wisconsin team who just barely, lost to Oregon, coming into town. You're fighting for bowl eligibility and 6 wins. If you lose to Wisconsin, it's a lost season. If you beat them, at least you're still maybe moving toward a bowl game. But we thought a bowl game was inevitable about a month ago. And right now they're fighting for their bowl lives.
Right. All right, folks. Well, this has been week number 12's wrap up here. Hey, before you head on out of here, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, get notified every single time we drop a new episode. Make sure to check out SpinableSports.com because the Irrational Confidence Podcast is part of Spinable Sports. So check it out, SpinableSports.com. Special thanks to our producer, Drew. Without him, none of this is possible. And make sure you like, subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. That's all I got, Fresh. We're cruising along. It's week 13. Exciting week. We're 1 week away from rivalry time, the best week of the whole college football season. I can't wait for it. But we got one more week to get through.
These next few weeks are going to be real spicy. Football is going to be much more, a lot of real tense situations, and I can't wait to start breaking down the action.
Yep.
With that, everybody, hit up SpinableSports.com, hit up a Spinable Sports YouTube channel, subscribe, spread the word, help us build it. Hit us up on X, Twitter, Twix, whatever you want to call it. SpinableSports.com, a bunch of new articles up there for your enjoyment. So read them, love them, hate them, whatever. Interact with us. We want to keep talking to you. And with that, we'll talk to you with our week 13 preview. Bye, y'all.